Right, so in today's video we're unboxing a brand new lawn care tool. I picked up the Einhell Cordless Scarifier. I went to Tool Station this morning to pick this up and I'm going to unbox it today, give sort of my first impressions of it, but sort of explain why I've gone with this as opposed to another Scarifier. Now, if you've been sticking around on this channel for a while now, you'll note that I already have a Scarifier in the garage. I've got a ferric Scarifier, which funnily enough was the very first lawn care tool I bought when I started this channel. The first couple of videos that I had were reviewing that Scarifier, and that's when I really didn't have much knowledge, I guess, of lawn care. And I don't really have loads now, but I've got a little bit more, so I think I'm in a position to make a few better choices, maybe not perfect, but better than I used to. There's a few inconveniences when it comes to using a Scarifier. The first of which is the fact that it's corded, so, you know, naturally it makes it a little bit more difficult depending on where you're using it. When I've used it on this space in the past, it's not too bad because right next to the door, happy days, plug it in, jobs are good, and it's only a small space. It does become difficult though when I'm up at the top over there, or particularly when I'm out at the front. So the fact that it's corded is a bit of an issue. And the second sort of problem I have with it is the fact that the blades are quite thick. Now that means that when you scarify, it's really aggressive. If you've got lawns that are full of really thick thatch, let's say you've got scarified for a couple of years, then that tool is a brilliant bit of kit because it's going to rip out loads and loads of dead material. However, the fact that I keep on top of my lawns, you know, I'm out here cutting them every other day, maintaining them all the time, means that they don't necessarily build up a really big thatch layer compared to what some other lawns would. So getting on and aggressively scarifying it with that machine is a little bit sort of overkill, and that's why I've opted to go with this Einhell, because from what I've seen from the photos and a few other videos online, it looks like it has quite thin blades, and that's going to come in really useful, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So there we go, it's a nice little bit of kit, to be honest. I'll put the arms on in a sec. I quite like the profile. It's really small and much smaller than the ferrics that I've got in the garage, because that one has a big massive grass collection bag on the back. And for anyone who's scarified their lawn before, they'll probably know that if you put that collection bag on the back, you only have to do 1 or 2 strips sometimes and it fills because of, you know, the amount of dead mats that comes out. So the fact that this is just open isn't an issue whatsoever. There we go, nice and straightforward to put together, which is always a bonus. So if we just tip it back to have a look at the actual blades underneath, you can see that, like I said before, they're actually quite sharp compared to the Scarifier that I've got. They're probably about, you know, 2/3 the thickness, almost a half the thickness, and the shape of them as well is really key for what I want this machine to actually do. So obviously I've got it for scarifying lawns, and that's absolutely what it's going to be able to do, but I've also got it as well to verticut. Now if you spend an hour on YouTube or on Google, you're going to see 1,000,001 different things to do with the difference between a scarifier and a verticutter. Now if you think of a scarifier, it's a blade that cuts vertically into the lawn and rips out thatch. If you think of a verticutter, it's a blade that cuts vertically into the lawn and also rips out thatch. Now that makes them sound like they are the exact same thing, and technically in a way they are. However, both processes are slightly different, although they are very similar. So when you are scarifying, you're trying to rip out as much thatch out of the lawn as you can, and usually, like I said before, the Scarifier I've got in the garage, if you use something with thicker blades, you're able to rip out a little bit more of that thatch, and sometimes you can get those spring-tine cylinders as well that rip out a lot of thatch from the lawn too. However, when you think about verticutting, the aim of verticutting is to essentially, you know, do what it says in the name. It's there to vertically cut the lawn. Now this rarely is done for a few different reasons. Both of the lawns in this back garden are bent fescue lawns, and what that basically means is that you can prune these spaces by verticutting them. Now when you're vertically cutting the lawn, all you're doing is sending a blade down and you're cutting things like rhizomes and stolons, and they're like little runners that are produced from bent grasses and fescue plants. So if you think about bent grass for a second, you'll have one parent plant, it'll set up a stolon across the lawn, another plant will pop up and it'll set a root system down, and another stolon will go across and it'll have another plant and it'll put more roots down, and that process continues. When you vertically cut the lawn, you're cutting those stolons, effectively creating multiple parent plants, which means then the lawn can thicken much faster and it can become much more dense. You'll often find companies selling scarifying attachments and verticutting attachments as two completely different products, but that doesn't necessarily always need to be the case, because when you're scarifying, you are verticutting, and when you are verticutting, for the most part, you are scarifying to an extent. There's a lot of videos on YouTube you'll find where people will verticut and scarify, and if you look at the mounds of what is produced from both processes, it's almost the exact same thing. Obviously there are slight differences. When you're scarifying, you're going to want to really dig into the soil a little bit more, and sometimes you want a bit of a thicker blade to be able to do that with, and sometimes when you've got these types of blades here, they can be slightly more aggressive on the lawn, which is great for ripping out thatch. However, when you're verticutting, as long as your blade's thin enough and it's able to cut through the stolons, it's able to cut through the rhizomes, it's going to do the exact same job. You'll often find that verticutters have almost like a star-shaped blade, and the best way I can sort of describe is it's a little bit like a circular saw cutting through the lawn. It's going to rip out a lot of thatch, but it's going to be really effective at cutting those stolons and those rhizomes. But a machine like this is going to be perfect for doing both jobs. Now, I do have an Allet cylinder lawnmower which I use to cut this lawn at the bottom and the lawn up at the top, and that enables me to cut really, really short. However, this Scarifier attachment is just over £200, I think 250 maybe, not entirely sure, but I know their verticutter attachment is over £400. So to buy both of them, you're looking at £600–700 all told, which is an unbelievable amount of money. Whereas the Scarifier I've picked up today was £200, and it'd be even less if you didn't have the 2 batteries with it. But there's a few reasons why I've gone with this one as opposed to going with those cartridges. First and foremost is that I want this Scarifier to be much more versatile. I want to use it on more than just these 2 lawns in the back garden. I've got a small front lawn, and I've also got a grass verge as well that has quite sort of a steep angle to it, and the Allet mower that I've got in the garage weighs just over 40 kilos, so actually getting it on that space and keeping it sort of angled correctly is going to be a bit of a nightmare. I use a Bosch on there at the moment, which is around about, I think, 10, maybe between 10 and 15 kilos, something like that, and that can be pretty tricky at times when the collection box is full. So getting on with the Allet would be a bit of a nightmare, whereas something like this, which weighs just less than 10 kilos, is going to be much more sort of easily maneuverable on that space. So I'm going to be getting loads of use out of this Scarifier over the next few weeks. I've got some more videos coming up soon where I'm actually doing some verticutting on these back lawns and scarifying technically as well. I've got a few projects out at the front that we're going to be getting on with, because it's that time of year now where we really need to be thinking about autumn lawn care. So if you are interested in sticking around on this channel and seeing how I actually maintain these lawns through autumn and get them ready for winter, then if you haven't already, consider subscribing. Like the video if you enjoyed it. I didn't really do much today, just unboxing this machine, but that's what this channel's about, is showcasing off a few different products and seeing how well they fare, especially as well at a fairly decent price. So as ever, the Instagram is in the description below. Finally, thanks for watching.